He's really he's shameless in intellectual argument. He's absolutely without character, a moral foundation, or even intellectual substance.
Welcome back to the Getting Lit podcast. The last episode we talked about Medea, the first girl boss from ancient Greek history. And this week we're continuing JDO month here at the Getting Lit podcast. You've listened to like probably over 12 hours of JDO in the past month, because I put together all of the Gene Wolfe episodes that we did in couple of years ago, and he was on for the Legacy of Cain episode, and now he is on to promote his new book and just generally, shoot the shit with us. Yes, it's called Gods Fare No Better, and both Frester and I have read it and loved it, and yeah, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about influences, and yeah, welcome back, JDO. It's been one episode since you've been
Happy to be back. Too long, if you ask me.
JDO, third mic on the Getting Lit podcast.
Yeah, no shit, right? Between this and Rare Candy, I'm going on Rare Candy like 3 times too. But it's fun. That's what podcasts are supposed to be. They're supposed to be chill hangs. And what else am I going to do? Hang out with my son?
I saw your picture with your son and how he like wrecked the remote control car. That is so sad. Did you get it fixed?
Yeah. No, it's a lesson. It was a lesson. So I told him that's kind of how parenting works. You tell him, he's like, Dad, can I put the Mario Kart car in the water? I said, no, buddy, it's going to break. And he's like, I want to do it. And I was like, all right, but you understand that it's going to break, right? And he's like, I don't think it's going to. And I'm like, all right, try. And it goes, and this dies halfway through the puddle. And he's like, it broke. I was like, yeah, it did. It did.
Well,
he's like,
sorry. Yeah.
I was like, can we get another one? I was like, no, that was it.
Well, I tend to think that probably the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because like, I don't know. Well, like reading this, it feels like that same attitude that your son had, it like goes into the book. It's like, I'm going to do this, like, the story might break, but I'm going to do it anyway. For listeners, it doesn't break though. So yeah,
nobody likes this kind of thing, but it's what I want to do. So we'll try. Yeah, there's a lot of Mario Karts and puddles in this one.
But yeah, and I did want to talk about the process and the road to this book, because obviously I actually reviewed the first book that you did many moons ago, which was what was it called? Dying World. Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
there it is. That Frester's got it. I think I have a hard copy somewhere of it. And so what you've done is like you wrote a series of short ones set in this world, which is like Cyclone City, a kind of cyberpunk. How would you describe it? Like cyberpunk kind of blended with spiritual elements and basically everything you're interested in.
Yeah, it's just the place where I can write about whatever I want to.
Yeah.
So it's Cyclone City is it's basically supposed to be Oklahoma City. Yeah. Right. It's in the middle of the country. It's a city that for whatever reason didn't get bombed in the apocalypse. And so it becomes a sort of hub by default, because it's kind of the only one there. And what grows up is kind of native Oklahoman culture, right? And mixed with like this kind of weird Akira thing, because I had the Yakuza move in. Don't really know how the logistics of that worked out, how Japanese people were like, we're going to go take over Oklahoma City, but who gives a shit? And then, magic is also real. So,
yeah, amazing. And so, what was interesting about this, like reading the first one, like I don't actually remember if the magical elements of it were in the original. Was that sort of added in later and you folded it in as the tale grew in the telling, so to speak? Like
100%, right. So my first plan was to do 10 of these little slim novellas, which looking back on it, not the best idea. But
why?
What happened
just before we get into that, why is that not the best idea?
Because you can't come out with a slim novella in a series, especially 10 of them, and maintain an interested readership. So what I saw was a massive fall off from Dying World to War in Heaven, right? And it makes total sense. There's this gap of time between the two. They're an interconnected story, and people's reception to War in Heaven was positive, but at the same time, it was kind of like, I think I need to go back and reread the first one. So I started thinking about, I was thinking about The Green Mile, how The Green Mile came out in those 7 slim novellas first, but those don't exist anymore. Like if you've ever seen The Green Mile on the shelf, it's a full novel. And what happened, your question is a very good one, because where did the magic element come from? So when I started writing the third part, that's when I started realizing that I was moving towards a conclusion of this act, at least, and it was becoming much more fantastical and magical. And I was like, wait a minute, these 3, it's the same book. I just did what other people do in private, where I slowly wrote a book over 3 years, but I released the first 2 drafts of those books online. So what happened was, because things got so fantastical in the third one, I went back and rewrote pretty much the whole first book is a rewrite. And then the second book survived for the most part. I just moved things around to make it a little bit better. And then you have this bigger, 50 or 60,000 word neon hell weirdo. I don't even know how to describe that part of the book, but I had
psychedelic.
Psychedelic, right? But I just had to make sure that it all made sense going all the way through, because I couldn't just copy and paste the first 2 books and then do Neon Hell. I realized it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that's the great about it too, is in that process, I feel like sometimes one of your strengths is obviously at the sentence level, amazing writer. And you do think about structure a lot, I think, in this one at least. And what I liked about it was how free and sort of easy it was with all of these disparate elements. But it makes sense, but it also doesn't adhere to this sort of nerdish, every piece must fit. Although I could foresee people doing subreddits on this book and being, what does this mean? I can see them doing that. But it's not that the book invites that necessarily, because it's not telling you to it's not good. I'm sure you've got lots of lore in your head, but it's not a lore focused sort of story is basically what I'm getting at there.
Sure. Sure. And I've always liked writing books like that. I went back because every year or so I'll check in on the Goodreads for my earlier book. There's one that I want to read to you really quickly. I can find it really fast. Listeners, just stick with me.
Is it your first book? Or
yeah, it's from By the Time, right? So By the Time was this book about a Siberian gulag, and the essential plot of it is that they want to escape, but they need to bring someone with them to eat when they run out of food on the Siberian tundra. But that's relegated to the very back portion of the book. Most of it's just these kind of vignettes that are strange, and but there was this one, and it's from a baby. We just got done talking about how non-binary is not real. This person, Rachel, only has 3 reviews, but her review is, I've been camped reading every review for this book, trying to find an examination of the ending, and have found very little that illuminates what that was all about. After nailing down a description of what bizarro fiction is as a genre and finding other examples, this seems to just barely hit the mark. Most of the fantastical or strange elements can be written off by the reader as a fever dream experienced by the character's access to hard drugs or the effect of an extreme environment on the human psyche. But due to the style of this book, vignettes with an efficient word count, there's never an examination of the stranger events, which makes them appear unimportant, requiring the reader to move on quickly to the more weighty, realistic parts, which make up a significantly higher percentage of the book. And the ending felt as if the author suddenly remembered the genre he was going for, which was jarring in an otherwise interesting novella grounded in that weighty, depressing real. So like this person is like combing the internet to try to figure out what this thing means. And when I was younger, so I wrote that book when I was 23 and was doing a lot of drugs. And, but I developed this kind of style where I thought it was kind of cool to never explain anything and to talk to the reader as though they already knew what I was talking about. And what's cool about getting older is that I became obsessed with things like it was a lot of it was going on Rare Candy and talking about like Crichton books and shit and being like, this fucking rules. Like, how do I get closer to that? And so with every book, I'm going to try to get a little bit more propulsive with like the plot and kind of go in that direction. But there's always that element of my writing where I know what it means and it's fun to me that you don't, and that I'm just going to talk about it like we both know. And that's why this was before I'd read Gene Wolfe, right? So when I found Gene Wolfe, I was like, oh, it's my favorite author.
Yeah.
Like he gets it.
He does
like,
the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. He knew when he was writing that shit that people were going to be like, what the fuck does that mean? He mentions a word and then never mentions it again. And so it's a game. It's fun. And I think this book has less of that than my earlier. I don't think there's anything overly, obtuse or obscure about it. Maybe the tornado stuff doesn't make sense, but I really wanted to make sure that this one had that fun, propulsive plot, but also I can't help myself. Like, yeah, I'll throw shit out there.
I love that tornado stuff, like the legends, which I'm assuming is like Oklahoman, like folklore, myths sort of stuff. That really kind of localizes it, even though it's sort of like a, megalopolis sort of, hyper-capitalist. The world has come to this place. I just love, that element of it. And I love when people do that too, when they kind of localize their worlds, whether it's a sort of science fictional world or even just if it's a village or something like that. Like, in the particular is the universal sort of thing. Like, I just love that. And I just love that image. And I know you love it too, because it seems like you're obsessed with it, of the tomahawk, like kind of like diverting the hurricanes, or not the hurricanes. What are they called? Tornadoes. Yeah.
Tornadoes. Yeah. When I was a high school teacher, we'd have a bad weather day and I'd go in and the Kiowa Comanche kids would be like, be like, oh yeah, that was scary last night. There was a tornado coming, and they're like, we took care of it, because they do that. Like Kiowas go out and they throw a tomahawk in the ground, it splits the tornado, and it misses them. Right? It's a magical practice that I 100% believe is real, for reasons that I could talk about for maybe an hour. But I think that's an important thing about this book as well, and my writing style in general, is that I am a firm believer in magic and the occult as being an actual real thing. And I think that weather is a part of that. Like, I think there's a reason, like, living where I live and talking to as many people as I do, I've talked to a few meteorologists, and did you know that they still don't really know why a tornado forms?
Really?
Like, the top like, if you can look this up, they can explain it through like what's actually happening physically. But when I say, okay, but what forms it, right? Like, what kicks it off? They're like, oh, we don't fucking know.
So it's like the Big Bang kind of thing, where it's like they can explain everything that happened after it, but like why it happened is still no idea.
They don't know. They can see predictors, right? They can see cloud formations kind of starting to turn into a hook. And I'll say, okay, great. So what causes that hook? They're like, I don't know.
How can they not know that?
Right? Yeah. Well, you can say that about the Big Bang too. You're like, you guys haven't figured this shit out yet? That it's all just a constant loop, right?
I can understand why they don't know it, but it's annoying that they like present it as like the experts that you can't question when they like don't know the answers to these questions.
A lot of people are like that, though.
Yeah.
Honestly, like a lot of the vaccine people too. They can tell you every mechanism for how.
Shout out Claire.
Yeah, say the mRNA vaccine works, and it's like, but what about like the underlying like principle of the whole thing? And they're like, we don't know. There was one guy who knew, and he's dead now. And we've just kind of taken the technology and run with it. But no, I actively practice like sigil magic and different kind of prayers and curses and things like that. Because
who are you cursing?
Nobody recently, but you can do a really cool. You can do this thing called War Water, which is pretty cool. Where people are talking shit about you. You can write their name on a piece of paper, run a rusty spike through it, put it in a Ziploc bag full of water, put a bunch of pepper and nasty shit into it, lock it up and put it in your freezer, and they'll never talk shit about you again.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So I'm very into animism and different religions and things like that. And so there's a lot of when I'm writing, I think that's when it all comes out. Specifically because writing itself is a magical act. So like I become like I stop being JDO the retard and become JDO the wizard when I'm writing. Like, oh, all of a sudden it's like being on an acid trip where everything makes sense while you're tripping. Like that's what writing is for me. I'm like, oh no, I get it. I understand. And then when I'm done, I'm like, I don't know what that meant.
I love that metaphor. It's such a great, like, cause it's sort of hard to, unless you're a writer, it's sort of hard to kind of, you need to experience that to understand how good that analogy is, because it is like wizardry. I often use like alchemy as a metaphor, like, and I just love how you can just take something as like basically marks on a page or digital sort of thing and like transmit thoughts that are kind of like, and like feelings and experiences that aren't necessarily always your own. Like it's this weird thing where like you own it, but you kind of don't at the same time. And then you transmit this out into the world and people are experiencing it. It's like this form of like psychic kind of messaging or whatever. And people don't like privilege that enough when they're talking about like books and writing and literature and stuff like that, how it's like this spiritual psychic kind of act basically.
Oh, it's magic 100% because I can tell you what I did yesterday and I can tell you what I did a year ago. If you said, hey, do you remember that time that we were, on a hike in the Wichitas and we saw this, I can call that memory up. But when I open the book and read a page, I can't remember it. Like I can't remember sitting down to write that thing. Like I suppose if I give it some thought, I can tell you where it came from, right? I was watching this movie or I was watching that movie and it came out that way. But the actual writing of it, you're in a different space. The same way it's kind of, besides a handful, right? Like I'm sure you guys have both dabbled with psychedelics, but like besides a handful of extremely profound moments, you can't like pinpoint like, oh yeah, on my third trip, I thought this, and then I thought this, and then I thought this. Like, no. You just remember like when you see the weapon of the apocalypse or when you meet the elves, right? Like, I guess that's my DMT one. Like I remember the whole thing for that because that was fucking crazy.
I met Shiva on an acid trip. And like, I'm convinced it was Shiva because I didn't know anything about Hinduism or who that was. I thought it was Ganesh because that was the only one I'd heard of. But then like through reading different things and I'm like, yep, that exactly tracks with the experience I had. And it was like in like a full ego death, like acid trip kind of moment. So I feel like I squandered it really. I should have asked her or him more like questions or something. I was just like,
no. You didn't squander it at all. Like that was the whole point, was that you saw that. Right. And there are so many instances of this happening that it can't not be real. Like you can't see Shiva without knowing what Shiva is. And then later on finding out. It's kind of like what pilled me on telepathy was not telepathy, but like reincarnation. Right. So there are these kids who were born and they know all these facts about the person they were before, right? And they get it right, 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 right. That's not convincing to me because there can be coaching, right? But there was one story that I heard about. And it was a kid, and in his past life, he had been a World War II fighter pilot or whatever. And he's naming all this stuff. He's getting all this shit right. But then there's one detail that he's wrong about, right? I can't remember what the detail is, but they're like, oh, well, he got them all right, but he got this one thing wrong. 20 years later, like a letter surfaces, right? And that letter that surfaced, that's been lost to time for 20 years, confirms that that kid wasn't wrong. He was right.
Wow.
That's what got me, right? Because there was no way for him to be coached. It was something that nobody knew, that everybody thought that he was wrong about, that he was actually right about. So Fresta, your Shiva experience to me is where the proof is, when somebody who has no idea what they're looking at is like looking through a book and they're like, oh, fuck, that's what I saw. That's why it's true, right? Because who would have coached you on that?
Yeah.
Like,
and whether it's actually Shiva or something that some like guy in ancient India or something saw and then called Shiva. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's
sure.
That's up
the
to
human understanding of whatever these things actually is going to be like completely inaccurate, but there's like some level of accuracy to it. Like and then people have these experiences over times. Like, people have experiences of like Christ or the Madonna or whomever, like, and so like, I do think those are real entities of some form, and maybe they are like human consciousness projected into like a whatever, some kind of ethereal realm or something, like, you know what I mean? There's heaps and heaps of theories of it, and I think they're probably like 2% correct, and then the most educated person can probably only explain like 2% of that 2%. So it's like, you can't really like figure out what to do with these or what they like literally mean or anything, but like, to say that, like, because it's not all completely mapped out, it's false is retarded. Like, there's something going on there for sure.
Yeah, it is. Because what you said is really smart, because, like, if it's 2% of 2%, it doesn't matter because it happened. And it only has to happen once for it to be real. Like, you only have to see a ghost one time to be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, ghosts are real then, I guess. That's why trying to replicate shit like this in a lab, because intention matters too, right? Like, I was reading one of Russell Targ's books on ESP, and there was this fascinating point where they took somebody who believed in ESP, a scientist, and a scientist who did not believe in ESP, and had them run the same experiments. And the guy who believed it was getting results, and the guy who did not believe it was not getting results, right? It's that, is it a particle or a wave type of thing? Depends on the viewer. But the shit only has to be real once for it to be real forever.
I think there was some experiment as well around ESP that was around people being looked at. You know, when you're being looked at and you can't actually see even in your peripheral vision. Like, if I'm just fucking around with my partner or whatever and I'm looking at him, and he'll be aware that I am, even though his back's turned to me, and there's no reflections, there's nothing like that.
Yep.
I think there is a kind of low level. Everyone has sort of a low level kind of telepathic ability. And they try to like hand wave that away by like saying, shit like micro movements and like just stuff that's like even more like ridiculous.
Esoteric.
Than
just
the
actual
like,
esoteric.
Like, your eye blinking like moves this like current in the air, adjusting pressure that you're like what's that word? Proprioception, like
it's like some Dragon Ball Z shit. Yeah, where it's like a blade of grass rustled, and
they love using Occam's razor, except for things like this,
whereas
what they do is
clearly true.
Will immediately discount like any kind of like, lack of a better term, supernatural explanation, but then the most flimsiest materialist explanation, they'll like, well, if it's plausible, so therefore it disproves the like supernatural explanation. It's like, yeah, it's plausible, but like you didn't prove it, so why do I have to like be made to feel like the idiot into like crazy woo-woo shit when your explanation is just as retarded just because you watched like the fucking Neil deGrasse Tyson TV series. You're like, all the stuff about physics.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Or
do, yeah.
alien shit too. Just real quick with alien shit, it's like, to me, this is all just common sense. But like, do you really think that regular wakes up every day, eats the same breakfast, goes to work, eats the same dinner, fucks his wife, plays with his kids, goes to sleep, like that guy would decide to destroy his life to tell people that he was abducted by aliens? Maybe, I guess, maybe. But like nobody has ever talked about being abducted by aliens and it just went great for them. They make no money. Sometimes they get like released from their jobs or they become a pariah, but they stick with it. They're like, but no, it really happened to me. And to me, it's all about incentives with people. This is how I view politics. It's how I view the supernatural, whatever. Like, it's why I don't believe in Bigfoot, because there's always an incentive to say that you found Bigfoot, right? There's no incentive like Whitley Strieber, right? To say that like an alien fucked your butt and to have everybody think you're weird, right? Whitley Strieber's a bad example because he has a career, but a lot of these people don't. So
yeah, that's a really interesting point and one that I thought about a lot, because it's like that's a sort of evidence as well, like the incentives and like why would this person do this? Like, is this person completely deluded? No, they're otherwise a normal person. They're not like crazy or whatever. Why would they kind of go out on a limb to do this, to appear crazy or whatever? And it's the same thing like with the argument from like the Gospels and stuff like that I've heard a lot about. Like a lot of Christian apologists say, and I think this is true, that like the disciples basically were willing to go to their deaths because all of them were martyred. So like willing to go to their deaths and saying that they saw Jesus Christ rise from the dead. So like, why would someone do that? Like, if it was all just like this fake conspiracy or whatever and it didn't happen, like you would at least get, you would at least get half people like just be like, all right, no, that didn't happen. It was all made up. And so the fact that every single one of them was like martyred and like there's historical evidence for the majority of them that that's what actually happened to them. Like, you know,
they didn't have a concept of fame.
Yeah, and that is evidence, and that is evidence in itself. Like, and like the atheistic kind of materialist person doesn't take that as evidence, but that is evidence of conviction. That is evidence that they believe what they say. And obviously that's not evidence that like Jesus rose from the dead, but it's evidence that those people saw that and believed that that's what happened.
Saw and believed something. Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm with you 100%. Like, that's why I believe that actually happened.
So like, that's what I wanted to ask. Yeah, that's sorry. Yeah. Continue.
No. I was just gonna say people don't die for a goof, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm like trying to scare my kid and I'm like, I saw an alien, and then somebody's like, you sure you did? Click clack, like I'm gonna shoot you in the head. I'll be like, I was just fucking playing around, dude. Like, and as a matter of fact, I'm such a pussy. Like, I might have actually seen it, and if they were gonna kill me, I'd be like, I'm just playing. Like, no, it's not real. So like, these motherfuckers saw some real shit.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to ask you about in this book as well. Like, so obviously you said before that you believe in reincarnation. Reincarnation is sort of a kind of plot point in this book as well. So clearly it exists in this world. And you would probably also consider yourself a kind of Christian. How do you square those things, do you think?
An esoteric Christian.
An esoteric
esoteric Christian. I want to say, and you guys can, or whoever's listening can fact check me on this, but I feel like the anti-reincarnation crowd is relatively recent in Christianity. I wish I had facts and data to back that up, but I want to say I read that somewhere that like this was like a recent, like a medieval church kind of thing where they got to a point where they're like, no, that's not fucking real. Like you have, but like the idea of an eternal soul, I don't see how that, like, if you're thinking about like eternal punishment or eternal salvation, I could see how that could be a problem. Like you die and your soul goes one place or the other.
Yeah.
But I I don't really see like an issue. Like we obviously like what Jesus did that was unique was he went back into the sane body, the dead body, which we don't tend to do. Although some people have been dead for a very long time and come back. Rare cases, but it does happen. I I would have to work more because this is kind of like I've been listening to I'm going on this podcast soon, the Threshold Saints, right? Which is very like Buddhist and Hindu and talks about like the what do they call it? The samsara, right? The samsara wheel. And I'm kind of like a hippie 1960s Alan Watts type dude who doesn't believe that these apparently disparate beliefs can't be reconciled. Like I do think there's a way to, because if you're being born to work through your karma, right? And you're always trying to get better. I don't necessarily think that a kind of final salvation or damnation has to play into that at all, because Christian, Buddhism, occult, whatever, my number one belief, which was in the book, right, is in Vedanta, right? And so I definitely do believe that this idea of Vedanta, that you have a God who's all powerful, can do anything it wants, would get very bored with that. Like, okay, I can make whatever, but who gives a shit? So what better way to have fun and play than to create a bunch of beings that you get to inhabit each one of them? Because on an eternal timeline, you know, people would say like, well, what about people who get murdered by serial killers? On a long enough timeline, you'd get bored enough to be like, I'll try it out. Like, see what happens, right? So Vedanta to me is this like really interesting idea that they're actually like right now we're different people because that's how we're experiencing things, but we're really not. Like at one point, whoever this guy is, me, will be both Matts at some point. Or I mean, that's too linear in terms of like how time works, right? Because it's God can experience everything all at once, but we're all God looking at his creation in our own
it's like
way.
even that recent the White Lotus season where he explains it like, you know, you're like life is like a drop of water like splashing out of the like one big pool of water, and then like each individual life is just like a drop, and then that arc of it dropping going through the air is its life, and then it returns back to the one.
100%.
Which that's basically like I'm a Christian, like, but you know, like I'm interested in esoteric stuff too, and I basically think that all of these religions are just different interpretations of the same kind of set of data, and they're probably none of them correct to the, you know, like what I said before, 2%, but they're all like stuck around for so long because they're getting at something, and then people have these mystical experiences that does confirm aspects of it, you know, influenced by their cultures or whatever. So I think that totally makes sense, that, you know, life is just like God stepping into the realm of time and individuating small parts of him, and then experiencing the world, and then returning back to the source to like,
and then those parts being redone, right? Because wouldn't like if you threw the dice out, you'd be like, this is really interesting. So I've given this guy, let's say I was like a steppe warrior fucking 1500 years ago or whatever. Be like, okay, cool.
You really wish you were, don't you?
I do. Hanging off a horse, fucking shooting a longbow. That should be so tight. But like, let's see where this guy goes through his however many, 20 lives, 30 lives, whatever. Like, it all makes sense to me from a perspective of play, which is really the only thing that makes sense at the end of it. Random doesn't make sense. Like, we're all here and we have these feelings. Like, I'm a very simple person, and I don't understand, like, I understand like getting hungry or horny or whatever, but why would we even be having the conversation that we're having right now if there wasn't something to it? It makes no sense from an evolutionary biology standpoint, right? The functions that religions serve can be explained that way, in the Sam Harris way. But why people would be interested in them at all, like, when there's nothing writing on it for me to care one way or the other, I could live the rest of my life and never think about this shit again. And I'd be good. I'd watch action movies and chill. But I do think about it. Why?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's real.
But by the way, how's your Sam Harris? Can you do Sam Harris as well?
Sam Harris? Nah. I don't know if I know what Sam Harris sounds like.
He just does like really like calm, like there's like really, but no, kind of like, I'm Sam Harris, and I'm like just that sort of like trying to be like measured.
Looking at when you see your experiences, your just consciousness. I think we're just too Australian to get it right.
Yeah. And I don't think.
And our mother didn't invent the Golden Girls, so like that's the.
I went through a phase where I went through my like atheist phase, right into college.
Everyone
I had this
does.
Really cool like Irish philosophy professor at UTEP, and he was like he'd worked with Daniel Dennett on whatever, being gay or whatever, and he turned me on to Dennett. So I got the Dennett thing is really interesting, right? Because he wrote this whole book about the difference between, or about this idea of qualia, which is something that had like freaked me out, like since high school. I remember walking home from school one day and I was, that same buddy that I mentioned I was talking to, I was like, all right, bro. So like, you see that as blue, right? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I see it as blue too. But how do I know if I were to get transferred into your head that it would be the same blue that we're both seeing? And he was like, what? I don't, not tracking. So Dennett's
is that a sort of like breakfast? How would you feel if you didn't have breakfast kind of question? Have you heard about that meme? Anyway. Sorry, continue.
But like, so that, because it was something that I had thought of before, and I was also like, I grew up in speaking in tongues type churches and shit. And so, you're a kid and you're like, that shit was fucking corny as fuck. Now that I think back on it, I'm like, they were definitely locked in to something. Like, you don't do that kind of retarded shit unless, like that kind of shit. Anyway, when I found this book, then I got into Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, who is the GOAT of those guys.
He's the only one who's a good writer. He was
He was the best. And
he was the only one that was funny.
Like early YouTube, like listening to him like rip into Islam, I was like, yeah, fucking savages. Because 9/11 had just happened. Right. And then Dennett. And I got kind of into it, but what's really interesting is that nobody convinced me otherwise, right? Like nobody argued me out of that. Life just happened. And something would happen and I would feel something, like I would see a ghost or I would have this, not even psychedelic, just an experience. And I'd be like, I don't think this shit is right. Like there's some, and I think
life is the best argument for everything.
Yeah. I think a lot of atheists, like your Bill Maher's and your people like that, I think they're being stubborn. I think they shoebox a lot of stuff away and they're like, we're just not going to talk about that time when that happened, when the truth of reality was revealed to me in a dream or whatever. They're like, no. I'm going to smoke weed and drink whiskey. I'm cool. I hate that guy.
Yeah.
I've never seen the appeal in him. Even when I went through an atheist phase, he just didn't seem interesting at all.
I think the whole atheist thing with, like you said, Christopher Hitchens was the best because he was the only one who had kind of like a wit about him. Like,
he was fun. And he's a fun guy.
And he was the only one who kind of like had a kind of was well read outside of like science crap. Like, like he had read the classics and was sort of like a more educated in those sort of softer disciplines, which actually are the hardest, I would say. Like, because these people who were like, 150 IQ, like doing neuroscience or, building social media empires and stuff like that, I feel like they just don't understand stories. And so
that's not what they're there for.
This is why you get these reviews of like people whenever someone like that or someone sort of trained in those disciplines or whatever engages with something, it's usually science fiction or like those sorts of disciplines, because obviously it involves science. They don't appreciate it. Maybe you're finding this, JDO, with your stuff. They don't appreciate it as art. They appreciate it as information. You know, was the information conveyed to me in a efficient manner? You know, it's just like,
right.
That's not art.
Right.
Art isn't about efficiency. Like, it's not about information. It's about like these, you know, higher, and they are higher. I don't care. Like, I'm using hierarchical language. These higher kind of themes and ideas than just the merely numerical or material, you know?
Yeah. And you find that a lot with, so science fiction to me seems to be broken down. Like in the 60s, military sci-fi was really big, which is just another type of autism, right? But then, so you had like the Robert Heinleins, and then you had the Philip K. Dicks. And what's interesting, oversimplifying, of course, right? But like the Heinleins kind of took over sci-fi. And it was like, we'll talk about some cool tech, which to me is like total snooze. I do like Heinlein. I'm not giving him credit because, like, you know, The Cat Who Walks Through Walls or Stranger in a Strange Land do have that 60s psychedelic. Yeah. You couldn't escape it. It was
he's more hippie than he's given credit for. Like, he's actually more like psychedelic. Yeah, but yes, continue.
Yeah. But then, you know, what really amazed me when I got back into sci-fi was finding people like Jack Vance or Gene Wolfe, and I was like, oh shit, or Michael Moorcock, right? I got into some Moorcock. And
I went back to Portland.
I was like, hey, is that voucher still good? Like, are we still good for that? But no, there is, like, I think when you look at, like, who's that mathematician who discovered like a formula that proved God existed? Who's a French guy, and then he like became a recluse, and nobody heard. No, this is a recent guy. This was like a guy who died in like the 80s or the 90s.
No
but
idea.
Like they have all of his like writings, and they get more and more esoteric. And when you're watching this documentary, you know, you go through this process where he's a obviously very analytical person, very brilliant, like off the charts brilliant. And his calculations lead him to the conclusion that God is real. And and so I think that, like, when it comes to fictions, like science fiction, there's people who are at like step 1 where they're really good at math. And then there are people who were born with the autism that gets you to step 57 or whatever, that like all the mystical shit is real. And sometimes, like, when it comes to a guy like me who sucks dick at math, like, I just skipped all the way up there, which is also, I think, what Gene Wolfe did. He was obviously a very intelligent person. He understood languages, and he invented the Pringles can and all this kind of stuff. But you can just jump over all that other shit and realize that science fiction is meant to be like a psychedelic incubator for sea changes in culture, basically, right? And you can skip all the, like, the Shishin Liu. I haven't read any of that because it seems like it's that kind of thing. I might be wrong. Have you guys read like the 3-body problem?
No, but I've heard Zach's podcast episode on it, which is amazing. Like, he did, like, I think he did a few of them, but he
like it?
He did, but he went over it, and like, it does sound pretty insane, but like, it does sound very autistically mathematical Chinese, which you would expect.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Different strokes for different folks, I guess. But, and I haven't read it, so I can't really comment that much. But no, I like, I guess I kind of lost the plot there, but
you like the more psychedelic stuff, and that's,
I like the weird shit.
Yeah, that's definitely in this book. Like, you know, you have sentient mold, and, you know, yarn. We have to talk about yarn because that was one of the things that I really responded to, and I had lots of questions about it when I read it, because I just loved the idea of it. And yeah, so it's like sort of like a technology, but also sort of different to the other technology in the book? How would you describe it?
So a big theme of the book is that there is not one God, there are multiple gods. And similarly, there's not one technology, there's competing technologies.
Love this.
The whole
this
idea...
is like Neil Gaiman's American Gods, but like good. That should have been my blurb.
There we go. In the book, there's a big world serpent that's swallowing its tail. And all that really represents is that one day it's going to kind of swallow the world and rebuild reality. And so what's going on in the time frame of this book is a kind of musical chairs for these competing gods and technologies to have dominance when everything gets restarted. It's like whoever is in the seat when it stops, like that's what's real. And so with technology, this world has the kind of standard cybernetic implants, right? Like the kind of first gen type thing, which I show characters that are kind of gross and rotting and shit because they just put a bunch of stuff in their body.
The early adopters.
But at some point, the early adopters, right? And then there's this, the rhizome, because I believe that the mushroom is sacred and has its own, like I think that it's an alien intelligence that has its own ideas about how humanity should work. Through some mechanism deep in the lore, right? Like the rhizome became a competitive technology to the internet, right? Through kind of mycelial connections. But it also became a competitor in technology. And how it does that is that you essentially inject different types of rhizomatic material into your body and it grows the kind of thing that you want it to grow. But what's important is that it's a technology that has a mind of its own. So it's not a device that has a function that you can, it's not a gun that it can turn into a gun. But importantly, it's called yarn because I read Tyson Yunkaporta's Sand Talk, which talks about Aboriginal Australian wisdom and stuff like that. And he calls all of his books yarns, which I love. Like he's not giving you an essay, it's a yarn. It's a conversation. And sometimes that yarn comes to a point and sometimes it doesn't, while at the same time still doing so, right? Like you kind of it's the idea of getting the point from the conversation, not from the thesis statement, right? Like it's in the listening, in the interacting that you kind of get it. So yarn in this case is a conversational technology that is working on a lot of different levels. Sometimes it heals people. Like sometimes people get shot and they die, and then other times they get shot and the yarn heals them, right? And what's important is that it's not a technology that's godlike in determining who lives and dies, but the idea is that there's been a conversation that's been happening between the technology and the host for a while that leads to certain outcomes, right?
Yeah.
Like you could have a gun, your hand turn into a gun, or you could have your head set on fire for no reason, right? Like
I love it. Yeah, it's like a chaos agent in some ways, because like you never know when conversations will go off the rails, kind of thing. Like, and I love
that's
that.
Yeah. That's how I structured the whole book too. The whole book is supposed to feel like a yarn that like goes off the rails, and at certain points, it very definitively goes off the rails for like 40 or 50 pages. That's all intentional. It's supposed to be this thing that feels alive because there are blind alleys and red herrings and random instances that don't matter to the plot. So I'm kind of simultaneously obsessed with plot, but also this organic living feeling of how I think a novel actually should be. And if I find the balance one day, it's going to be the best fucking book ever.
Yeah, I love that. Even though in the book you literally say Australia is gay, you like fold in some like Australian concepts there. I don't know if you know this or not, but like in Australian journalism, every story is called a yarn as well. So like,
oh, I didn't know that.
When I used to be a tabloid journalist, they'd be like, "Oh, that was a good yarn. It like made the top of the list or whatever in terms of readability or whatever." So people say that and it's fairly common. Well, is it common now? I don't think so, Matt. Like, people don't say it as much as they used to, but like
maybe not as much. It sort of depends where you are, but it's not like you're using weird slang to say, I was having a yarn with this bloke, whatever. Like, it doesn't strike me as like, oh, that's like an archaic kind of term.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I love I've always loved yarn as a analogy too, as this like unspooling thread of stuff as well. And that's definitely in the book where you feel like, especially when, the main kind of, I guess we would call him a villain, like his unspooling kind of evil and just keeps getting bigger and more disgusting and grotesque. And that's great. I love that.
Yeah, that's basically the whole book. And like, whether or not that string or yarn or whatever ever gets rolled back up is inconsequential, because it should look like a plate of spaghetti noodles by the end of it, And then in the end scene where, well, I do want people to buy it, but I was really focused on making sure that it had a real ending. That took me maybe the longest of any one part of the book. But
sorry to interject, but why was that? Were you sort of I know you were envisioning it as like a 10-book series originally, but were you kind of in the mode of like, I want this to be like a ongoing kind of guts, like Berserk kind of thing? Like, what was the...
I think that to be honest with you, it's because I have a real hard time with endings.
Do you?
Because I don't care about them. Right? Like, when I read a book, the ending is often the least important part. Like, I don't think of the endings when I think of books. I just think of like, that's where it stopped. And I realized at a certain point, hey, motherfucker, a lot of people will get very mad at you if the book does not end. I mean, what we talked about earlier with the first book, right? Like, what is the ending? What does that mean? I was like, I don't know. I mean, I do know, but I wasn't concerned with making that like actually work. No, the continuation aspect of God's Fair No Better is that now they're all a team, right? And so my goal, if this book sells okay, is to have each book be that they go on different missions together, right? It's a Mission Impossible type thing, because you have all the characters there. They all have their own kind of skills, and you can send them off on. I have the second book all in my head, like ready to go. I just have to pass like a certain threshold where I'm like, okay, this is worth it. But no, like, endings have just never been my strong suit. So I went through, I think 8 revisions on the ending just to make sure. Because like you might have been one of the earlier ones. Because you did mention this. It was like, or maybe you didn't, maybe somebody else did. But it was like the ending was very like unsatisfying. Like somebody hit me back.
No, I like the ending.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, they were like, I was ready for this big kaiju battle, and it just kind of didn't happen. And I was like, fucking bet. So I went and wrote like 4 pages of a kaiju battle. I'm like,
I remember the kaiju battle, so I must have read that version.
Yeah. Maybe it was earlier, but yeah, no, I had it much more. The ending was much more truncated because I was kind of done. I was like, well, the story's over now, right? And people are like, no, there's a last battle that's supposed to happen. And I was like, is it? All right, well, okay.
Oh, and you do something towards the end that, like, most people, I think, most writers would just be like, I don't know about this, but I just love how ballsy it is. And I just love,
the big digression?
Yeah.
Yeah. The huge digression.
And it's so funny too. Like, but it all makes sense. Like, it's all rewarding in the end. So like, and also people would say not to do that at the very end of a book, but I actually think that is the time to do that sort of thing, because at that point, everyone's invested, so they're not going to throw away the book. All right. So they've only got like, I don't know how many pages before the end it is, like
70 or something like that. Yeah.
So they're like, they will slog through it. Like, so it's, you've trapped them. And I just love how like, how cunty that is.
Yeah, no, early on, that was like my biggest, that was my biggest thing. I was like, I wanted to do this and I was really scared and nervous about it. And at first it actually didn't work. And this is where reader feedback is huge, right? Because they were like, I got this piece of feedback that said they love the digression. It's great. The issue that they had with it was that in an earlier draft, I ended on like a cliffhanger, like before the boss battle starts. I had like the good guys and the bad guys line up, get ready to fight, and then there was this digression, right? And the solve for it, which is really fun, is that I had them fight and I had the good guys get their asses kicked, right? Like everybody gets beat up. Everybody's either like maybe dead or knocked out or whatever. And the bad guy has won. And then I do the digression. And it was just bringing that to a stopping point allowed the digression to happen, which I thought was kind of cool. Like that was interesting. I was like, okay, cool. So you can take that advice into any chapter. It's like bring it to like people don't like cliffhangers where the cliffhanger is that something's about to happen, but first, a word from our sponsors shit. It's like you have to bring something to a kind of end with a hint that more is coming, and then you can digress. But I mentioned Fresto. What did you think of the digression?
Are you talking about when it's like the Hana chick? Is that what you mean by the digression? Yeah, those are probably some of my favorite parts of the book because I didn't really understand what the context was, but I liked, and that's like, it's also really dark, like that she's, I won't give away anything, but like that she's like sociopathic and stuff. And, I guess it sort of does get to what we were talking about earlier with the sort of concept of Vedanta or whatever. Yeah, I like those parts a lot. That was really fun.
See, and so far everybody has said that, which makes me so happy. Because of anything else in the book, that was the one where I was like, I might cut this shit. Like this, this might not be it.
That makes it like that. Like I know that your sort of intentions with this is to like just have fun and like make it a fun reading experience. You have fun as well, and I know that you've said, and I believe this as well, that if you're having fun when you're writing, the reader's going to have fun too. Like, and that's very evident in this book. But at the same time, this makes it like really novelistic, I feel like. And I feel like we've talked about this maybe in the Gene Wolfe episodes, like that, like really leaning into, I guess, what you would call the affordances of the novel, like that the novel doesn't actually need to be a slim volume of like propulsive action and that's it. Like that, and they have a place. I love those sorts of novels, you know, Crichton's the master at that. But like, I just love how you've got that element and you can also do these things like this idea of, kind of Bakhtinian idea, I guess, of like multivocality where you like, we've got these different characters, but also different registers and different voices and like putting that all in like a big kind of magnum opus. Is great, but it's also fun at the same time. Like, I feel like a lot of people forget about fun when they're leaning into the novelistic form, you know?
I do. Yeah. No, I know that 100%. I think that the really cool thing about the technology of the novel, which is like one of the earliest technologies that we have, I tweeted about this, and Twitter probably wasn't the space for it, but I read this great book by a guy called Danny Nemu, and he's
like a character from your book, actually.
Right?
He's like a swan man or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Nemu does sound like a swan. Yeah. But he's a daime priest. So daime, I think, is ayahuasca. It's like a South American, like they all drink ayahuasca together. But he has a lot of great appearances on Rune Soup. And he wrote this book called Neuroapocalypse. It's a great big book, lots of footnotes. And in Neuroapocalypse, he writes very exclusively about Genesis and Exodus, right? And he's very interested in the way that since ancient Hebrew did not have vowels, you could substitute vowels to get different meanings. And his question is, why do we go with one instead of the other? For example, like in the beginning, God created the word. Could the vowels could be rearranged to mean in the head, God was created. Weird.
So
right?
It's kind of like quantum, even that it allows, like maybe it is both, or even multiple, more than. Oh, is that his point?
So therefore, Jews they deserve to rule the world.
Exactly. If you move the letters around,
I submit.
No, that's 100% his point, because he makes this fascinating argument at a certain point in the book where the reason why the Bible is so successful is because it is the book that most directly mimics the human brain. It's full of contradictions, all these things that like the Dawkins and the Hitchens types would be like, well, there's contradictions in it, so it's not real. That's actually what makes it feel more real to people who read it, because sometimes you are wrathful and sometimes you are benevolent and sometimes you're this way, and sometimes like you have these Rashomon type 4 books of the Bible where it's all from a different perspective, and if you look at the details they can be a little bit different, but the overarching picture is the same. But I became obsessed because one of my favorite books is Infinite Jest, which became like déclassé. Yeah, it became déclassé to like that book, but I love that book. It's one of my favorite books. And it really does feel like you're inside of a brain when you read it. All the best books really do. Even if you're reading something a little bit trashier, like a Polonic book or whatever, you're in a brain. It's an autistic brain, but it's still a brain. And so video games don't do that. You can't go off on tangents or yarns or what have you. Like there's no part of you that feels like when you're playing like cyberpunk, for example, like, oh, I'm really in this kind of like weird, organic, esoteric, shifty space, right? No, it has to be hard coded in there or else the video game wouldn't work. But novels can do that. Songs too, I think. Longer songs. Like longer, like Mars Volta type songs or whatever. I think they can do that. Movies can kind of do it, but the novel can do it. And what's fun about the novel is that the emotion that you're feeling is based upon whatever register it's written in. So if it's written in a Beavis and Butthead fun style, you can go on a psychedelic journey of, kaleidoscopic, multifaceted voice and character and all this. And you can do it while laughing about penises at the same time. It's truly still, I think, our best technology. I think the novel is our best technology. Hasn't been topped.
It's definitely for best technology for dick jokes. Definitely.
Yeah, and your novel actually made me laugh, which rarely happens at all, even in funny novels. Like I read
Nice.
Norm Macdonald's book, and I thought that was funny, but I don't actually remember laughing out loud during it. So I think the funniest part in your novel was just that bit where he's battling the samurai guy, and then the guy's like, "Oh, you murdered my brother." He's like, "Yeah, I don't remember." He's like, "You know what he says?" He's like, your shield is gay, and he's just like, my shield is gay. That's all you have to say.
That came from a real life story. You want to hear the real life story of that? I went to a house party once, and I got really drunk, surprising no one. But it was kind of it was like my buddy's house, so I was kind of like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. Nobody's gonna kick me out. And I was talking to this girl, and she was trying to holler at your boy. And she was cute. Nothing wrong with her, but I was in goblin mode. I was on demon time. So I was like, nah. So I was just being a dick. I'd make no excuses for my behavior. It was awful. But there was a kind of a white knight guy there who you knew, he kind of wanted to fuck her. This was he wanted to marry this girl someday. And who was this skinny, just fucking wasted waste of space, who she was for some reason interested in me instead of him. It's because I'm handsome. But anyway, I was sitting on the porch and I had just rejected her in some very cruel and unnecessary way. And he came out and he read me the riot act. He was like, "Listen, buddy, you don't talk to people that way.
Bucko.
Listen here, bucko. I'm trying to fuck her." But he gave me this whole spiel, and like I'm sitting, like I'm on this porch, Oklahoma, hot night. Like a big thing that we do is we have like full sofas and like lazy boys on porches, right? So I'm like in a lazy boy, and he talks to me for like 5 minutes, and he's wearing. Well, I guess it wasn't a hot night because he had a pea coat on. Maybe it was the winter. Anyhow, he
had a pea coat on.
Yeah, he was wearing a pea coat through this whole thing, right? And so he's reading me. He's actually got his finger in my face too. He's like, "You don't do this, you don't do that," blah, 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 blah. And like he finishes his whole thing, and I'm like, I got my beer, and I'm like, "Your pea coat is gay." And he's like, "My pea coat is gay? That's all you gotta say to me?" Like, so I just took that and just transported it into the book.
I wasn't there,
and it was my buddy's house.
His peak coat was gay.
Yeah.
It was. And he was like, he started ripping it off like the Hulk. Like he was ready to fight me, but it was my buddy's house. So like 3 guys intercepted him and like ejected him. And I walked around like the cock of the walk for the rest of the night. Like I do whatever the fuck I want. No. So yeah.
How cold was it though? Why was he wearing a pea coat? Was it because he was outside?
Man, it was probably like, I mean, people here, if it gets down into I'm going to use Fahrenheit, into the 60s or the 50s. No.
Sounds super hot.
Yeah.
I get what you mean. It's like here, there's like in Queensland, people joke, it's like once it gets to 24 degrees Celsius, like we start putting beanies and jumpers on and stuff. And like my fiance's from like the state, bit more southern, so she's a little bit more cold resistant. She's like, "What? It's not even cold at all." And I'm like, "We'll jump it up."
When people from his state, which is basically like Florida, and it's where I grew up, moved down to my state, which is much further south, like for the first time, they're always wearing like scarves and gloves, and I'm like, "Motherfucker, it's not that cold. You don't need fucking gloves.
It is freezing.
But
down
it's not
there.
the Antarctic."
You literally have the Antarctic winds blowing straight across your city.
I mean, that's true. But, you know, they dissipate a little bit. So, yeah.
Well, it's kind of like there's a lot of people who've moved here from California, which Oklahoma can get very hot. But when I mentioned that I talked to a bunch of meteorologists, it's because people come from all over the globe to study meteorology in Oklahoma. Because if you can get a semi-accurate forecast in Oklahoma, then you're good to go wherever else you want it, because the weather is so fucking chaotic. Like
it's
we
like
will
training
literally
high
have...
altitude.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
why
like...
is that? Is it because it's flat? Like, and so it's harder.
I think it's
because
predict. I think it's because it's a huge Indian burial ground. Yeah. That's why I think that is.
Okay. Yeah.
But
I was
you'll
looking
see
for the
something
Sam Harris answer, but
no. It's basically like you'll wake up in the morning and it'll be like freezing cold, like you'll have frost on your windshield, and then a few hours later it'll be hot as balls, and then it'll storm and a tornado will come through and rain will come through, and then it's kind of nice. And then it gets freezing ass cold again. It's
actually very similar to Melbourne. You should come visit. You'd love it.
Yeah, I'd probably fit right in. This is great. I do want to visit Melbourne one day. I want to go to Australia. My wife has gotten really into Lord of the Rings, so there's a New Zealand tour in the works.
Yeah, it's not very far. It's only like a 4-hour flight from my city. So
you might as well do both if you're going to New Zealand.
You can come stay with us for free. Come on.
Let's go.
Okay. Yeah, we got a spare room. I do podcast in this room though, so like, you know, you might be. That's your bed. That's your bed right there.
I'm gonna be in bed with my wife, and Matt's gonna be like, just saying some wild shit. Like, so I mean, let's talk about the Jews. Let's I'm gonna be like, no, baby, he's cool.
No, I love Jews. They're the hottest. Like Israeli Jew men, so hot.
Oh, women too, man. I mean, like,
they're very
like
stunning.
all the Persian, like that region of the globe has the most hotties per capita than any other race, hands down. There's nobody else. People who are like Scandinavian, they all look like fucking ghosts, man. Like they're tall. They're tall. That's what the dudes have going for them.
What are those aliens called? The Scandinavian ones? The
Nordics?
Yeah. Are they called Nordics?
Yeah. They're called Nordics, yeah.
Okay, I thought they were called something else, like named after a star or something. But yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah,
I do know that there's a whole class of aliens called the Nordics. So,
yeah. And they're benevolent, aren't they? I think they are. I mean, they're white, maybe. So
yeah.
Yeah, they have like space socialism or something.
Yeah, they have space social democracy.
They leave all their flying saucers unlocked at night because
they've got a real big problem of like importing too many greys, though. So like they've like a lot of far right parties are being elected because like the centrists won't like deal with immigration. So yeah,
and their taxes are just crazy.
Yeah. So stupid. Another like. Preston, do you have any questions or anything you want to talk about the book itself, or?
Oh yeah, I did sort of, because with the world serpent thing, like I thought that was really cool, and like the way it was debated whether it was like real or not. But I guess it got me thinking, like isn't like that kind of Ouroboros, like the snake eating its own tail? That's kind of like an alchemical symbol, right? And isn't it kind of like the closed system, like like to hermetically seal something in? So I don't really know where I'm going. It's not really a question. That's just kind of what it got me thinking when I was like reading the book, that world was this like hermetically sealed in little system where, yeah, like magic and stuff is possible.
I like that a lot. I wish I could say that was my intention, but I'm going to say it is from now on.
And steal it for the next book.
I'm stealing that. But no, I, if you want to know the real reason I picked it, it's because of the World Serpent and God of War. I thought that was really cool.
Of course, yeah.
But no, I mean, it totally makes sense, right? Because like the whole idea is that this thing is a representation of a coming apocalypse, right? Which is like, it's not the end of everything. It's the rebirth of everything. So like when I was thinking about it, I initially picked it for that reason, right? Because I saw it in God of War. But as I thought more about it, I was like, this is actually kind of cool. Like if you just constantly had a harbinger, like a real, though it is debated, like a real harbinger of the apocalypse, like right there in the sky that you couldn't deny was there. But it is this, man, that's a fucking cool interpretation. It's like, yeah, like it's like the borders of the book itself, basically, right? Like that's what contains the whole world. But
well, do you know with apocalypse, the word in Greek is actually, it's not about destruction or anything like that. It actually means like revealing something. So like that's what a cleansing fire like does. It reveals what reality actually is.
I like that.
Once all of the kind of fake, all the idols are smashed, all of like society is destroyed, like what's left is what's revealed as what the truth is. And I love that the book kind of in that kind of higher level kind of plays into that. So you could definitely use that for the next one. For the next book.
Yeah, my next book is actually like my thought process. Well, actually two thoughts. First one, isn't it fun that somebody like me who's just trying to do something cool, like, isn't it weird that whenever guys like me do this kind of thing, we do touch on things completely accidentally? Again, that goes back to our like, how is telepathy and reincarnation real? It's not through this kind of scholarly, like Gurdjieff, studying the text type thing. It's just opening yourself up when you're writing. And this is the thing that continuously comes out over and over and over again through no effort or fault of our own. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the second book that I might just write it because it's cool. I want to like really focus on like J horror, right? Like if this was like my Takashi Miike one, I want to go into like Pulse and Cure and The Ring and The Grudge. And so I thought it'd be cool if like the team splits up and goes across, they go Indiana Jones globe hopping to different parts of the world to trap and collect different curses and grudges, with the idea that they're going to put all those curses and grudges on a rocket ship and send it up to the World Serpent to kill it. They figured out that's how you kill the thing. So like the first third of the book is this like Indiana Jones temple run, like finding different cultures, curses, and how those have developed in this world. And then the second act of the book is like Alien, where they're on a ship and the curses like break out and people are getting killed by different like Japanese ghosts. And then the third is they land on the world serpent, let all the curses out, and they fight like snake people on the world.
Amazing.
Like that'd be kind of cool, right?
Yeah, that would be
like
cool.
So that's like my broad idea of the second one. But people have to go buy it. So
yeah,
because if they don't buy it, I will never return.
Well, you got to update your store to have the option for Australians to buy it, because I tried to buy it through your store. I ended up buying it on Amazon. So there's always that too.
And I complain about like how fucked up that distribution has been. Like I went with Book Vault because they make a very attractive product, right? Like the book looks
very
good.
pretty. Yeah.
But the issue is what they did was they only print out of the US and the UK. And so what I wanted to do was to put Book Vault as my direct shipper. So you guys wouldn't necessarily be able to get it that way, but to have like a slightly lesser quality not create space, that I'm showing my age. That's what KDP was back in the day. But to have like a KDP version. But what they did was they populated an Amazon page for me. And so now I'm having a hell of a time talking to an Indian guy on like the Amazon help page, trying to explain to him what happened. It's like this page was populated without my permission. It's only shipping to the US and the UK. Or like if it's Australia, it's like $80 or some dumb bullshit. When every other book that I put out, if you put it out through KDP, they'll print it natively wherever the book is actually sold. So that's what I'm going through right now. It's every day when I get home from work because of the time difference, because Book Vault is in the UK and Amazon is Amazon. Like I get home from work and I open my email and they're like, "We do not understand your request." Like I just want Australian people to be able to buy it.
I can probably find a printer here for you if you want to do that. Like we can,
let's do it.
We can see if we can organize that somehow.
I got the files right here.
I do live in like the publishing cities, so I could probably find one that we could. Actually, there is a printer just across from me, across the laneway, that I could just see if they do books, but I'm not sure. So,
it's just one of those kind of random problems that you can't plan for. Like you can't plan that Book Vault is gonna make an Amazon page for you.
Wait, so what does that mean? So they're gonna like send the copies they print in the UK or US to Amazon to then ship to me? Is that how it's gonna work? Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Because Amazon will print. I think they'll print here and then send it to you. I think that's the way it works. Like they've got
that's how the Amazon print on demand is. But I wasn't sure with this one because I knew you'd gone through a different place to get them printed up. So
and the whole idea was that like I wanted to do direct sales, and I really was impressed. Like I ordered a pre-copy or whatever, and I was like, oh, this is legitimately better than Amazon. But I still wanted that option. Currently, hopefully one day Book Vault sets up a printer in Australia or Canada or wherever, because like even Canadians have to do like the same thing, and they're right there. Like somebody could order the book in Lansing, Michigan, and get it for a normal price, but then if you're 40 miles up in what is that, Saskatchewan, whatever the fuck it is, like now you can't get it unless you pay $50, which is stupid. Like that doesn't make sense. But that's just like in the weeds type stuff.
No, I want to get into that stuff because I find it interesting, and I'm I haven't announced anything yet, but I'm doing a special kind of publishing thing soon. And all of this stuff I will need to get across because I know nothing about any of this stuff. But yeah, we'll have.
It's interesting. And it's gonna be fucking good. Like you're such a fucking good writer, dude. Like,
thank you.
Yeah. And of
so
course
are
you have good taste. Yeah. You like this book, so good taste. But and the marketing shit is crazy too. So I'm having some success with Facebook ads, which is really interesting because now my Facebook homepage is my Broken River page, which has no friends. So I'm being introduced
It's a Nigel
to
no friends.
Yeah, it's like Facebook is trying to figure out who I am, so I'm getting the most base like normie slop of all time, and it's really interesting. And it makes you realize how curated your feeds are. In other places, it's like, it's like how many red balls can you fit into a tube? Like this is the brain rot that random people are watching all the time. But I've found like my cost per click is really good. It's actually it's pretty low. I get about 7 cents per click. The click through rate is pretty good. So that's at about like 10%, which is huge. Like that's huge, right? Like 10% is like off the charts. And then the purchase from those clicks is another 10%. So overall, like it's a low number, but I'm finding people, which is interesting. Like they're not Twitter friends, they're not Instagram friends, they're just random people who are finding the book, which is my goal. I wanted with this book there's like a marketing strategy that's like spray and pray, where you just like try to find as many people as possible and get them to buy it through whatever means necessary. But I actively don't want that to be the case. So the paperback costs $30, which is expensive for a paperback. The ebook
but it is a
costs
chunky
10.
boys, so it's worth it. Yeah.
It's chunky, but like that's there on purpose. Like I don't want people to buy the book unless it's worth $30 to them. Because I've been in this space for a long time now, 15 years, and there is no benefit to random normies finding your book. They'll hate it. They'll give you a bad review. They'll tell nobody about it. You got their money. Sure, that's fine. But that's not what we're like. I get money elsewhere now. Like writing books is no longer this idea of a path to financial solvency, which is funny that it ever was. But if you think about luxury items like Nikes, like nobody, like people who love Nikes will pay $300 for a pair of shoes and they don't care. And somehow that idea has never entered our realm of the arts, where it's like, this is an active barrier. Like I want to find people who will enjoy this shit. Not because my feelings will get hurt if they don't like it, but it just, from a business perspective, how does that make any sense? Like why would you want it to, like, if you price your shit low and you're making like $3 a book off of it, 500 people buy it, 450 of them hate it, what have you really made? Like you've made $1,000 for nobody to be in your corner. It just doesn't make sense to me.
And you know what's funny about that as well is that it is kind of like almost an opposite of the sunk cost fallacy, where if you pay $30 for something, you're kind of like incentivized to be a little bit more like enjoy it a little bit more. Does that make sense? You know, like
it does.
Rather than like if you paid like $1 for like some shitty ebook, like you like the investment in it is so low that like therefore your engagement with it is so low, and therefore you're not as kind of thoughtful in like, you know, trashing or praising it, you know, whereas if you spend more money on it, you like, it gives you pause to think more about like what I've bought and how do I feel about it, you know?
100%. I'm trying to see if I can see this book. I paid $80 for a book the other day because I wanted to read, like I really wanted it, you know? I was like, oh fuck, it's a bunch of money, but I want it. It was Catafalque is the name of the book. And I read it. I read the whole fucking thing because I paid that much money for it. I'm like, there's no goddamn way that I just spent $80 on a book and I'm not going to read it. And I didn't like it. But that's neither here nor there, right? The point is just that like there has to be some, I want people who are on my level who are reading this book. They have to be like, this is not casual reading. And it would be foolish to market it as casual reading. Like, why would you want somebody who likes Crichton, who I love, or Patterson, who I have no beef with, to pick this book up for $1 and then give their thoughts about it? It makes no sense. Like, I want to cultivate people who are down. So the idea is to get the marketing as good as possible, like cool cover, adequate description of what's going on, nice blurbs, and then it costs $30. And there are some people who it could take them a month or a year where they're just like, I want to spend that. I want to spend it. $10 is too much for an ebook. But then they do, and it's like, yeah, you broke. You broke.
Well, yeah, I remember even with my zine, like I had this like philosophy, like of like, you know what, I've got my own like photocopier printer. This stuff's super cheap. I'll buy the cheapest paper, and then I can put it out for like a super low price, and then theoretically I'll sell more copies because. And I even like made my own website where I made the postage calculator actually like accurately figure out the cheapest way to send everything, and it did all this work for it. And then it was like, I realized eventually like it was retarded. And like when I'd see other people just like using Big Cartel and like just $20 postage and then and then I like up my prices, I actually just like sold more and like not like crazy amount more, but I'm like, I was making like $1 off a sale there. And now like I'm making like 5 or whatever. And like, you sell a few more, and it's just like, it's like this, you can't do this like mathematical thing of like that. It's unless you are actually like, selling a Michael Crichton book or something where there is a market of 1 million people who buy it. If it's just like a niche thing, you're better off charging more because people will pay those prices. And there's also that thing of like, if something is too cheap, it seems like, oh, they mustn't have like faith in their own product.
Yeah,
like,
you don't believe in it. Yeah.
Right. There's that. And there's this whole thing where it's just like, I'm self-aware enough to know that this is not Jurassic Park, right? Like, I know what it's probably going to sell. So my thing going into it was that I'm going to make $10 off of every book sold because financially, that's the only way this makes sense. Like, I can't spend 3 years writing a book that is not made for a wide audience and then sell it so that I get $3 a book. That makes no sense. Even if I sell 1,000 copies, I make $3,000. What kind of bullshit is that? So I basically priced it where I was like, I'm getting 10 per book. Like, it's $30 after all the fees and Stripe processing and whatever. I make about $10. I make about $10 on Amazon too. It's
I got it
close.
for like 52 Australian on Amazon. When I did the calculation, like it was 45 Australian was $30. So I was like, oh, wouldn't have been like, probably would have cost more actually to get it through your site or whatever. So, so like, it's whatever. That is a pricey book, but you know, I think it's worth it. And like, it's not that crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and it's just its own thing, right? Like all the other books can cost $15, $20, whatever, you know. This one costs 30.
Yeah. If
you don't want it, don't buy it.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's almost like, you know, the other day I went to this sort of they hire out the big exhibition building from like the 19th century or whatever, and they put heaps of stalls of like local designers and shit like that. It's all Australian made stuff. So because it's all Australian made, it's all really fucking expensive because, you know, you can't make it in China and then, you know, sell it here for basically nothing. But like, you know, I bought a tea towel, like an Italian tea towel for my Italian mother, you know, with tomatoes, you know, pomodoro, like sort of thing, for her birthday. And it costs so much money.
I want to know that number.
No, I'll tell you, not on the recording, but I bought it because I wanted to support that stall because I really liked what she was doing and, you know, and 2, I wanted to give my mother a unique kind of gift. Like, so I was
Bespoke,
happy. Yeah, I was happy to spend that money on, like on a bespoke product. And that's the way I think a lot of people, especially if you don't write like Crichton or Romantasy or something like that, I think that's the angle that you have to take. And I think that's,
you have to.
if you don't, like, you ain't gonna make it, because like, if you're not writing that stuff, pretty much you have to be in the mainstream publishing industry to be writing that stuff anyway. You should treat it like a bespoke, artisanal kind of item. Yeah,
I agree 100%. And I have so many friends who they're just fucking stuck in this rut, right? Like, where a lot of my friends, unsurprisingly, write similarly. I wouldn't call Gods like a difficult book, but weird, like
uncategorizable sort of,
uncategorizable weird shit. And it's like, I got to a point where I became obsessed with plot and character, and and I was reading all these books, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take the principles from these books that I can use and use them, but I have to also come to terms with, this is not what I write. And it's a tough thing, I think, for writers to come to terms with, because writers want their cake and to eat it too, where I write whatever weird shit I want, and I have the marketability and the mass appeal of a Crichton or a Patterson or somebody like that. I came to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm not them. I'm not them. And some writers get to that point and they get bitter. They say, I'm not right then. It's because people are fucking stupid, and they just spend their whole time being mad and not making any money. The smarter way to look at that is to be like, oh, I'm not like them, so I can charge more because my audience is smaller, right? Like, why not? Why not? I know that the audience for this book, like the ceiling for this to me is about 10,000, right? Which, when you compare it to the millions of copies that other books sell, is like very small. But 10,000 at $10 a book, that's $100,000. And I think that that's doable. I think it's work. I think it's a business. It's not a spray and pray where I can just put the book out. Like, I work on this every day. Like, find it. Like, my goal is to find 3 readers a day who I've never met. Right. So I go on to the Facebook ad and I look at the analytics and I see who's buying it. And every time I see like a new data point, I'm adjusting the marketing just a little bit to be like, okay, so people who like this are more likely to. But over enough time, when you've really dialed down and found your fans, when we're talking a year from now, the book is going to be very successful. It's like, how did you do that? It's like, well, I found the people who love it and who talk about it. Like, how many people have I told to go watch John Wick? 100? Because I fucking love John Wick, right? Like, how many people have I told to go watch, I don't know, not very many, because I didn't like that movie. But the age of mass media and mass marketing is over. That's done. That's done. So there's riches and niches.
Narrow casting, sort of.
Yeah.
Just, and a long, thin tail, I
don't want to find people who are just kind of casually interested because it kind of looks like a cartoon. Like, I don't care. Like, do you like Takashi Miike? Do you like Grant Morrison's Invisibles? Do you like weird esoteric shit? Are you a semi-adventurous reader? Like, if that checks your boxes, then buy the book. If not, please don't. I don't need it.
I love that. That's an amazing marketing strategy. Please don't buy this book if you're not that.
If you're not down, then what are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
You're wasting your time. I'm wasting my time. I wrote this book, well, for selfish reasons, of course, but also to entertain. And I don't want to try to entertain you if I'm not your thing. If you like Anthony Jeselnik and I'm more of like a Tom Green, then don't come to the show. It's different shit.
Who is your Jeselnik to your Tom Green, do you think?
What do you mean?
in terms of writers. If you were Tom Green, who is your Jeselnik?
I like that you immediately zeroed in that I was the Tom Green.
You know it's true.
Oh man, who is the Jeselnik? I don't know, man.
Who does? Or it's kind of hard now because you kind of write different things now, but like maybe previous who write similar things. Bradley.
Like my No, he's a fucking loser. Jeselnik's at least good. Yeah, I think what's difficult about that is that I think they're both funny.
Good. Yeah, in different ways.
But yeah, no, if you wanted to know who, I mean, all of my beefs, my literary beefs are personal, right? So it's like people who I know are one way, but present as another way. And it's just,
well,
just because I know them.
You know what's funny about that as well is that pretty much, from what I can gather, everyone that you've beefed with has been not very good either.
Yeah, that's always been a part of it for me, and it's it's
much easier when
circle,
they're not very good. Yeah,
right. So there's like a small circle of. I'm actually really glad that you pointed that out because there's a lot of people who I also came up with who I think are very good, who I've done nothing but support, and so on a certain level, like my. Barring one person who Kelby went after a couple episodes ago, who he is a good writer. He does have a speech impediment, but he's also a very good writer. Barring that guy, most of what drove me insane about the writing world was the elevation of talentless people to these like, man. I'm getting wound up. I can feel it. But like, but you just, when you're in it that long, you get this kind of crushing realization that the quality of the books do not matter. Like Sean Cosby's a good example. I've done multiple rants against this guy, but you know, his book was,
is he related to Bill Cosby?
He's not.
He is black though, isn't he?
He is black, and that's why he's
Theo,
famous.
I would like to talk to you.
And so, like, that was kind of like that was kind of my big break. So the Sean Cosby story is really funny because he started kind of making himself present in the crime fiction community on Facebook.
He was an inserter.
He was this like he was a dog shit writer, like, and there were a bunch of them. He wasn't alone. He was one of many. And you know, me and my friends would kind of like share his posts and be like, LOL, like, look at this like absolute dog shit. And there was a point in time because he was friendly enough where I actually hit him up and I was like, hey Sean, dude, like if you want to like make this good, I can help you. I was like doing my little side hustle as a, you know, book editor or whatever. And then what happened was Sean was in the right place at the right time and he met the right editor, a guy named Josh Wetzler, who's like a big agent in the book world, right? Like very powerful agent. And this guy took Sean's books, gave them to editors, said, do whatever you have to do. Like, just fix this thing because this is our guy. And the books came out. They sold very well. And, you know, like Obama put one of his books on like this is the best book I read all year, like type shit. And, which is all fine. That's all fine. Get your bag. I don't give a fuck. What bothered me was that Sean unfortunately took that as a sign that his writing was actually good. Like he got the wrong message from that. A more self-aware person would be like, okay, I'm being pushed by this machine into being in this kind of position. I'll take the money. I'll take the fame. I'll be good, like whatever. But Sean like started lecturing people about how to write. That sat very wrong with me because I was like, motherfucker, you write your first drafts in crayon. Like, you're not a great writer. And then I kept it to myself. And then COVID hit. And I expressed some opinion that was wrong about whatever. He hopped in. Black Lion King is his Twitter name, to show you what kind of retard we're dealing with. And I just went like nuclear. Because what was so funny to me and what was so upsetting was that like so many people who I really had respect for, who had made fun of him with me, all hopped on his dick as soon as like the fame came, and I didn't. I was like, no, this guy's really bad. Like, he's not good. Like, even the highly edited versions of these books are still not great. They literally found a black guy. It's like that Dave Chappelle skit where, he was talking about how Monica Lewinsky was ugly. And he talked about how, like, Bill Clinton would open the Oval Office door and go like, you get in. Like, that kind of thing. Like, there were so few malleable black authors that they could make their kind of flagship guy, that they just picked this dude and just completely astroturfed it. It's all fake. And yeah, people didn't like that.
But then that sort of, I'm sure that happens. That doesn't just happen with black guys. That happens with like so many writers that they're just. I've seen it.
They're
actually.
rich, or they have connections,
and they're like they're pushed, and like it's basically their writing is pretty bad, and it's sort of saved by really good editors. And when I say saved, like you said, it's sort of like it's like a triage. Like it's not, the wounds of the writing have been stitched up, but like it's not like they're going to run like a quarter mile or anything like that. It's just sort of like, and there's so much of this, and this is why a lot of mainstream publishing is really, really bad, because they're not selecting for like already really good writing. They're selecting for other kind of elements and then basically massaging it into something that's like vaguely publishable. But even then, sometimes it's not like, you're just like dumbfounded that you're like, this was published by Penguin, like, yeah.
And the thing is too, is that like, this has a lot to do with white people being pushed out, right? Because I do believe
white people are the best.
I mean, I believe that. I think that like different races are very good at different things, right? If you want to say like, okay, who's the best at playing basketball? Who's the best at playing basketball?
Oh, I think like Vietnamese guys are the best.
Yeah, right. No, immediately when you say like who's the best at playing basketball, you're like, oh, like big ass black dudes, right? Like, obviously, who's the best at math?
Vietnamese
guys. That might actually be closer.
Yeah.
I believe, and I'm not even gonna equivocate this. For whatever reason, white guys are really good at writing books. Like, we're just good at it.
That includes Jewish guys too, I guess.
Oh, Jewish people are fantastic at writing books. Philip, like, I mean, come on. But I feel like as soon as you say that, right, the climate's shifted a bit, right? You can say this a little bit more safely, but I was saying it back then. It's like, it's not to say that other people can't do that, because obviously there are white people in the NBA and there are, non-white.
Andrew Bogut.
Yeah.
Aussie represent.
Yeah, there are non-white people who are fantastic writers too, right? But on balance, white dudes, and sorry, see me, but straight white dudes are really good at genre fiction writing. It's kind of our thing. And we've had this complete fucking shutout for a decade, where it's like, you are actively not allowed in the club anymore, right? We're trying to do diversity, so as long as you're not a straight white male, you're good to go. And this can be troubled by all the exceptions to this rule, but just go back 30 years. What was the makeup of genre publishing? 95% white dudes, and it fucking rocked. Like, it was good. Like, everything was better. So I think that this whole like very female, if it's crying, it's a baby type leadership, which is just rampant in publishing. Like 80% of administration in publishing is women, white women, by the way. Very curious. Very curious that the author makeup has changed, but not the administrative makeup. That's all remained the same. Just let us do our thing, bro. Come on, like bring us back. We're good at this shit. We're not good at everything, but this is something for whatever reason. Like I'm of primarily Polish descent. Like we're all fucking like weirdos who tell like cool, weird fairy tale stories. Like let us come back. In fact, bring everybody in. I don't give a shit.
Well, you know what's interesting about like when you're saying 95% of the genre fiction back in the day was that, obviously, but that 5% of everyone who wasn't were all also really fucking good. Like
Delaney,
Delaney, Ursula Le Guin, like Joanna Russ, like all these Octavia Butler, like all of these people who like a lot of people who are pushed now will say, that they're inspired by these people, but they're nowhere near that level of like even the people who aren't straight white.
Because they had to be up to straight white dude standards. You had to beat the straight white dudes at their own game. And unicorns can do it. Le Guin, one of the best of all time. Butler, one of the best of all time. Delaney, one of the best of all time. But you got to be that good the same way if you're a white dude in the NBA. You got to be that guy to compete with your average black guy.
I think people resist that a lot because because things like creativity and writing and stuff like that they're not like phenotypic things. They're not like physical things that you do. You just, I guess it is a kind of physics, but it's not you can be really old and do it. You can be really young and do it. But like, I guess that's why people kind of think in that way, but not sort of realizing that, different types of people have different strengths and weaknesses and things like that.
Sure.
And it's this one, it's always this one that is just like just not acknowledged or brushed aside. And in fact, you might say that the excision of this kind of group is like on purpose because like deep down, they kind of do know that what you're saying is true.
They know it. That's the whole point that I'm trying to make is they know who's got the good shit. They know who's got the good shit. And their whole political project is to prove that we don't have the good shit in any realm. Like white dudes aren't allowed to be good at anything. Like we have to be cucks basically. Like we have to bow and say how great everything that's made by other races is in relationship to ours. But it's like, no, I will stand 10 toes down and say that like we got this fiction shit on lock. Let us back.
The problem is
though,
like I'm picking up what you're putting down. The problem is though that a lot of people, and obviously I do not include you in this group because you're like one of the best writers of the 21st century, I believe.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
But like, a lot of people who do go down this line are really mediocre as well. So it's sort of like, it's sort of like a cope for like, why haven't I got my like, so that, I think like, the more woke people are kind of right to point that out because a lot of times these complaints do come from people who really aren't that good. Like
100%.
Like the anonymous Twitter, like anime Abby guy who's complaining about that. And it's just some like loser troglodyte or whatever.
Yeah. And I did want to talk about that as well with you, David, because what you're doing is not that, right? So you got your face, you got your name out there. Like you're not an anonymous right-wing guy. I don't think you're actually that right-wing either, but like some would argue.
I'm really not. Really not.
But like you're just not that like mainstream kind of view, not a cucked kind of white guy, but also your fiction isn't just like all about being an incel and being like trodden on by the black HR lady sort of thing. It's not. It's sort of like it's kind of beyond
a
that.
Mike Ma or whatever,
Yes.
like a Mike Ma.
Yeah. It's kind of
I
like
did like Mike Ma's first book, by the way. I thought his first
Yeah.
book was really good. His second one was trash, but like, yeah.
But like, and that is the direction that it needs to go. Like, if you want to be a countervailing force to all of this, like, woke nonsense that's sort of being pushed in publishing and literature and stuff like that, like, I see a lot of, and I'm not naming names here, but like I see a lot of, more right-wing kind of literary output, and it's just not good. Like it's just not good.
No.
And the reason it's not good is because it's overly kind of like, polemical, political, in the same way that the woke bullshit is overly polemical and political. Like it doesn't have the full spectrum of humanity in there. Like, so it's just sort of like, you just feel like you're reading another essay. And I can see that there's a need for these people to fill that space with, our guys in scare quotes, as they might say. But the problem is that, like, even just conceptualizing it like that is committing you to a certain position rather than the art itself.
Yeah, it's like accepting their framework.
Exactly. Yeah. So
yeah. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to piss real quick.
I really need to as well. I'm glad.
I have an answer for this, but I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Here, like what you were talking about is, again, it's the conception of the novel as a whole, right? So the novel in its most ideal form it does reflect a human brain, but not one specific human brain. That's the problem. So when you believe that the novel is supposed to accurately reflect your own internal experience, you get alt-lit, right? Like when Welbeck writes, one of my favorite books is The Map and the Territory, right? And he's bouncing in that book between different modes. Better than, I don't think he's topped that novel yet, personally. No. But like in that one, he's inhabiting different modes to the point where like he's in the book, but he's dead. He's like the subject of a murder investigation. Like he's been chopped up and all this kind of shit. Like that to me is the perfect metaphorical idea of what a novel is supposed to be. Like you're supposed to see yourself as separate from the book, right? To the point that you can be dissected. And what a lot of these people, the step that they don't make is that they just think that the novel is supposed to be a projection of them. And it's not that.
Like an ejaculation or something.
Right. Like an ejaculation, or like when you're writing, literally every hour that I sit down to write, we talked about this earlier, but like I turn, like I'm not me anymore, right? Like what I am is kind of like a conduit for the things that I've been thinking about and obsessing over into this kind of pure stream that is then translated into writing. But I don't sit down and think like, what point do I want to get across to people? How do I want them to think? And so alt-lit, even though some of them fall more on the right spectrum than the left, whatever, it's all of, we're talking about a different spectrum where it's like self-absorbed, narcissistic, navel-gazing self-reflection versus exterior-oriented creative projection. Okay. And so like that can take the form of any political ideology that you want to. There's no difference between like the cat people girl, whoever that was, I forget her name now, and somebody like Mike Ma, who are just, their whole goal with what they're doing is to, though I do think that Ma is actually technically a very good writer, their whole goal is to project their navel gazing onto you. Put it this way, it's forcing something on somebody versus playing with them. Right. Yeah. And so how would you engage in an interaction? If I wanted to sell you something, it's a very one-way type of thing. I want to sell you on this book. I'm going to come that much different than if I'm like, I wrote a book and I want to play with you. this is the Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson. Like, I thought that shit was brilliant, but he brings up this concept of play. And I do think that the idea of play can't be ignored in art in general. And I realize that everything that I vibe with has an element of play to it. I feel like they're poking me, being like, come with me. Like, it could be a painting. And if I feel like if it's Obama's face and it says hope, that's not play. Like, how do you play with that? That's a directive. But if you see something a little bit weirder, right? Like, I also feel that way about most like modern art, like the style type stuff where it's just, different colors or whatever. Like, that's also imperative. It's so removed from any reference point that it's supposed to be prescriptive for how you think about it. But then like you can see like that picture of this is very common in America, maybe not in Australia, but there's a painting of a pig that's jumping off of a pier into a lake. Like, that's fun to me. So all of a sudden now we're playing. I'm like, oh, what's that pig up to? What's that pig thinking about? Like, what's his deal?
Yeah, I saw like Anna Krivolapova tweet where it was something, she was quote tweeting something. It was like made out of like China, but it was like a mace, like the weapon, a mace. And she was like, all art now is just like juxtaposition. It's like lost storytelling. And like, I didn't study art or anything, so I never really thought about it in those terms, but I was like, wow, that really like clicked for why I don't fuck with a lot of like modern art stuff. There is no storytelling in it. It is just this like, what if a tough thing was actually made out of a fragile material?
Right. It's directive, right? It's Banksy. It's Banksy stuff. It's stuff that's supposed to make you think a certain way rather than playing with you. And I think that, Sini mentioned earlier, like in the book, that there's there's some stuff where you don't necessarily know what to think about it. It's because I don't know. I don't want you to think like maybe that's it. Like when I go through it, I'm playing. Like when I was writing the book, I was playing, and I don't want anybody to think any one thing. I'm just thinking about how fun this particular idea is.
It's even like Dostoevsky. You feel like it's super heady, dense stuff, but like you feel like he's playing with you and he's figuring out the ideas as he goes. And there's possibly many different interpretations of what he's getting at. Like, and it's this long kind of thing that feels like it's playful.
Has to be. It has to be. And so when you get to this, like, let's call it like the right wing art or whatever, as soon as there's like when Welbeck rants about women, it's still juxtaposed with like this obsession with women, right? Like none of his some of his characters are incels, but it's really complex. And it's really unexpected. Like
it's playful. Like it's that he still kind of likes women even when he's being misogynistic, Like
Like in Serotonin, when he talks about his girl, like this to me was like, it's not my favorite book of his,
no,
or in general, but there's a passage in there where he's talking about his, Asian girlfriend, and he just randomly mentions that she fucks dogs, and you're just like, what do I make of that? It's playful. Like you could tell he lobbed that shit into your arena, and now you just got to deal with it. What do I make of that? Like, does he? Because even the tone of the narrator isn't virulent and pissed and misogynistic. It's just like, and then she started fucking dogs, and you're just like, what do I even do with this? And that's a great place to be in literature. What am I supposed to make of this? Well, have you guys read the Unbearable Lightness of Being?
Yeah.
Such a fantastic book. It's so good. And it's full of that kind of shit. Where you're like, that book feels like it's playing with you from beginning to end. And you're just kind of like, I'm having so much fun reading every single page of this book that I don't actually like, you shouldn't care how it ends.
Yeah. And importantly was written under a context and like about the context of like communism and its shall we say antagonism to creative play. So like it's part of the book is about that, but it was sort of written in that around that context.
Is that the one? It's Milan Kundera. Is that the author?
Right. Yeah. Correct.
Okay, I have heard of it.
It's a good book. It's actually one of my favorite books. But very good definition of kitsch in there, like that he kind of elaborates on. But yeah, you're totally right.
Another one of my favorites in that same vein. One of my favorite books of all time, top 5. Have you guys read The End of the Affair by Graham Greene?
I have not. No, I'll have to read it.
Oh my God. Graham Greene. Have you read Graham Greene in general?
Yeah.
I have some of his books, but I haven't read them.
The Power and the Glory is another really good one. But The End of the Affair is one of my favorite fucking books. And it does this, like, no book captures like heartache and loss and despair like The Art of the Affair, or The End of the Affair rather. And but it also still has that kind of, because it's set during World War II and there's all this other kind of stuff going on with it. And it just, it keeps jumping. And that the playful element of that book, or The Unbearable Lightness of Being, or Mapping the Territory, or whatever, that playfulness puts you in a space where when those authors decide to hit you with some shit, you're open. You're open. Like your guard is not up. A polemic is necessarily going to put you on guard. Like that's where we're at constantly when we're on Twitter or reading some biased news source, whether it's right or left wing. Like we know they're trying to sell us some shit. When somebody comes to your door and says, "Hello, sir, I'm here with FAG Solar, right? And I'm trying to sell you this, that," you're immediately on guard. You're like, I don't know.
It's like when someone gives you a book and you can tell they're trying to like convince you of their worldview. So they give you like whatever. I can't think of an example, but like
Sapiens.
Some white fragility.
Exactly. Any of those books, like, and you're like, well, I fucking said I'd read it, so I guess I'll read it. But the whole time you just hate reading it and like looking for the flaws in it. Like, whereas if you didn't suspect them of having some like political view they're trying to thing on, it was just like whatever book, you might be more open to it if it just was right. If it was just in the context of like a fun time that you were having.
Yeah.
It's like
I think when like art gets to like a rhetorical level where it's like trying to convince you of something outside of the work itself, there are times when they can go so hard on that it becomes kind of like sublime and like ridiculous. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head. I read
Sean Penn's book, that one, it was like Bob Honey Just Do Something or whatever it was called. It had some stupid title. It was like $3 in the store, and I'm like, this book looks dog shit. I'm gonna read it. It was like 105 pages or something, and I actually kind of found it fun. It even breaks, like there's a bit where it keeps referring to President Trump as like the landlord or something. But then it like forgets that it was using this like metaphor, and then it just like literally has like a letter like directed to the president within the book, and it was just like this retarded spy thing about this guy, and then have all these like, then she pooed on the floor or something, like just nonsense. So it's so bad. I actually enjoyed it.
There are 2 books that come to mind, right? One of them is actually The Fountainhead, which I know is like very popular in our sphere, but I don't love. Like I don't love it.
I do.
But I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun reading that book. Like I had a good time. Like I would never in a million years call that a bad book. And it has all the digressions and when you get to the end of it, you have this whole feeling of like, oh, I'm gonna go fuck some shit up. Like I can do whatever the fuck I want. The other one, which is in a different register, is what's it called? It was the book that Norman Reedus wrote with Frank Bill. Frank Bill's another guy who I know. He's actually a cool dude. He's like a Southern crime writer. And Norman Reedus is an actor. He's the guy in Death Stranding, right?
And Walking Dead.
Yeah. Walking Dead, all that kind of stuff.
Boondock Saints.
And like you start reading the book and there are these insane digressions into, there's like you'll be a few pages into the book and there's a full page paragraph where a guy's fixing his lawnmower and it goes into detail about how you fix a lawnmower. And I'm like, I'm on board, bro.
Men
Let's
love
go.
that shit. Like that's a real male coded thing, actually.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Whereas the stuff towards women is usually about everyone's thoughts and feelings. I remember, I think it was you I was talking to, David, when we were talking about some romantasy book. It might have been Matt, actually, as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's straight away, it was like talking about feelings, like literally the first sentence. Like, and you're just like,
that's all women books, though.
Yeah.
Like, if you look up like these best-selling books that have sold like 7 million copies, like the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Waugh or whatever, I look at the preview page on Amazon, just like get an idea immediately. Like the first page of that book, 7 million copies sold, is like, I'm sitting at the job interview and I feel inadequate because the interviewer is so hot and I'm not that hot. And it's like, all right, yeah, cool.
I love that. Like, whereas a more male coded thing would just be like, straight in, a guy is doing something, whereas like this bitch is literally just sitting there, like and thinking.
And guys that like, if you started off a book and a guy was building a birdhouse and you were describing how it was and like the smell of the sawdust coming up and all this kind of stuff, I'd be like, all right, where are we going?
Let's
this?
go.
I'm in.
Probably the perfect like crossing of those worlds is like the American Psycho like business card thing.
Yes.
Like, 'cause it's kind of like
yeah. Isn't that why that book is so successful, right? Like it's both of those things in one.
Because it was
like,
written by a gay man, so like that's the female and the male.
He's a daywalker. Yeah. He moves between worlds. No. I mean, it's books. Guys, I have like a really bullish feeling about books, and nothing that's going on in the current zeitgeist supports this, but I really do feel like books are coming back.
Oh no, I agree.
In a major
because
way.
Just anecdotally, like so many people have like, because they know I do a books podcast, they may not listen to it, but so many people have like reached out to me and be like, have been like, I need to get it back into reading. And like, not just like, I want to get back into reading, I need to get back into reading, because like, I feel like a lot of people are just sort of, scrolling's not doing it for them anymore, so they're just like,
do you guys not feel that? Like when you go on Twitter, you're just like, what is this?
Or even
like, I spend hours on that app, and now I open it for like 10 minutes a day, and I look and I'm immediately like, you should be mad because a black kid killed a white kid. I'm like, nope, don't care. Like, I am moving on from that shit. Like, it just doesn't do it for me anymore. But like getting into a long, even if it's a podcast, again, I've mentioned it 15 times now, but I listened to that whole 3-hour Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, because it was a conversation that I was enjoying listening to. Right. And it's not easily chunkable into Twitter form.
And I'm just amazed that people still, there are some people who still need those like little highlights, and like that's what they respond to and talk about all day. And I'm just like, I feel like in my circle and everything, that like my own sort of mentality at the moment is like, I want to like dedicate to myself to like long form stuff. I don't want like bite size anything. Like,
no. Because that's meaning. That's what meaning is in life, is dedicating yourself to a long form project. What was that thing? That there was that janitor in New York. He was schizophrenic. The Temple of the Third Heaven was his art project. And so there was this janitor guy, and he died, and when they went to his apartment, he had made this beautiful, made out of tinfoil like city. It kind of looked like Angkor Wat or something like that, but made out of tinfoil. And it's like, that guy had meaning, because he spent half of his day doing a job that created results. Something was dirty and now it's clean. And then he went home and he translated his schizo thoughts into a tinfoil city.
Hmm.
That's the extreme example of what everybody should be doing. Like, I spend this much time at work deriving meaning from it because I'm changing reality through that job. And then when I get home, I'm not writing something to appease an audience or to make money, LOL. Like, let's all forget about that.
Mm.
But instead you're doing a cool creative thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it's a perfect life.
Yeah, it's great. Like, and that's probably the way it used to be for like thousands and thousands of years before there was this like kind of idea that you could make. I'm kind of sort of against making it creative stuff your job. But like
I am 100% against it. Yeah.
Because I'm kind of like everyone I've seen who does it, like there are exceptions. But most of those exceptions are people who started doing it like last century. But I think this century, it's going to be all of the great artists are definitely going to have day jobs. Like,
of course. Yeah. 100%.
Like, because I just don't think, I think a day job is good for an artist. It's definitely good for a writer. There's so much like, even if you don't, I'm assuming you're not going to write novels about selling fences, but I'm sure that like day-to-day stuff and like people you encounter and things like that are going to be much more fruitful for you going forward than just like sitting with yourself as a writer. Like, you know what I mean? Like you get so much,
of course, much
life living and experience that you can bring to your work.
Let me tell you a story. So like writing is about, it's all translation. It's not transcription. A lot of people think that it's like, oh, this thing happened to me. I got to write about it. I got to make sure all the details are right. But what it really is that you experience things that give you a feeling. And then in your creative space, you try to recreate that in a different way through people with deer heads or hand cannons or whatever. But I was on a call. I go out to this house and, I can immediately see that the fence is fucked up. Like the shit is falling down, pickets are missing, whatever. I ring the doorbell. The guy invites me inside. And as soon as I step in, the whole place is dark. There's no lights on in this house. Middle of the day, it smells rank with cigarette smoke, right? I'm like, oh, this is rough. And the guy himself, very nice guy, but, he's nearing the end of his journey here. He's got like lesions on his skin and strange things growing from his face. And he goes, let me take you out here and show you the fence. And so he takes me out back and we're discussing like the technical details, like, oh, we're going to cut that post there. We'll put steel posts in there. We'll put new pickets in. Like, this is all going to look great, yada, yada, yada. And he goes, this backyard, which, by the way, has a swimming pool with about 3 inches of standing green water in it, a bunch of overgrown plants. Like, it looks, apocalyptic in its own way, right? It's something that's been neglected. He goes, this backyard used to look really nice, but then, my wife died, my mother died, I got cancer, I had to have surgery, my son left to go join the Navy, yada, yada. And I'm sitting like, I'm going on appointments to places where it's like, oh, cool, yeah, we'll fix your gate like this, we're good. And then all of a sudden, here's this guy who's like very clearly like completely alone and he wants somebody to talk to. So he's extending this appointment out and out and out. And I tell him, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to make your fence look great. Just let me measure everything. I'll come in. I'll talk to you. Yada, yada, yada. And so I measure the fence. I go back in again, dark, but there's one light over the kitchen table. And this guy who just got done with cancer surgery is smoking a cigarette in there. And he goes, do you smoke? And I say, no. And he's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You want to see something cool? I say, sure. So he takes me into his garage. He has this old Model T in the garage. And he, wistfully says, this won a lot of competitions. This was a really good car. And I'm just, as he's talking, I'm becoming overwhelmed with this like feeling of like, this guy had a life, like, and his life is coming to an end. And so we're back at the table and I'm giving him all like the salesman bullshit, letting him know about warranties and things like that. And he's smoking another cigarette and he goes, he's like, I used to have energy like you. I used to be up and about doing things. And one day I woke up and I was like this. And I said, oh, well, that's it. And he goes, life's what happens while you're busy making plans. And so I'm just like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. Like this is like too fucking intense, Like this guy is like being my friend and like he literally needs somebody to talk to. Like he's got nobody left. His house is dark. And all of a sudden I start picturing like he told me that he bought the house 30 years ago. And I'm like, well, 30 years ago, like his kid would have been like my son's age. And my son's running around the house right now and being a dick and annoying us and being loud and whatever. But like one day, like my wife could be dead, my mother could be dead, my son could be out doing a job, and I could be like a lonely guy with nothing else there. So I left. It affected me profoundly. Like I drove in silence for like 30 minutes after talking to this guy because I'd just been hit with this reality that like we're all gonna fucking die. And everything that we're doing right now is one day is not gonna be there. And that's not the real sad part about it. Because if you get hit by a meteor and die, you don't get to exist. The idea that everything could be gone and you have to keep living just for a few years more, just inching toward, like he told me at one point, he's like, yeah, I want to leave this house for my son and this fence might be the last nice thing that I can do for him. Like, God damn, you're hitting me with all this? I'm trying to sell fences, baby. Like, what are you doing? And so like I left all that and I was like, so as a writer, you internalize that, but you're not going to rewrite that scene. When I left, I had a profound feeling. And that feeling was that shit does end. I was and I'm sure hospice workers experience this all the time, but like people have entire lives that not only end, but sometimes end before they do. And then the idea is, how do you translate that? How do you turn that into a parable or a plot point or whatever? And on the surface, it could seem like you're kind of a vulture preying on people's pain to put it into a book. But I think that one of the best things about being a writer is that you can sit down and you can write a scene about people's butt cheeks getting chopped off and try to find that feeling again, right? And amalgamize and translate it into this kind of cartoonish format to where people read the butt cheek chopping scene and they're like, damn, we're all going to die.
And it's like if you tried to like write that scene, like literally, it actually would read kind of fake, like and made up.
Yeah.
Like, so you have to like translate it to make it seem more real.
And this is what
100%.
I mean. Yeah, this is what I mean about the analogy of like alchemy, because it's like, it's one thing to, just transcribe that scene, like you said, but it's another thing entirely to transmute like some of the stuff you experienced there into like a ridiculous stylized violence thing it's almost like one of the things I love about this type of writing, and I try to do myself, is like you on the surface, it's doing one thing, but it's also smuggling in something else. I love the idea of like the writer as smuggler, like that like, you're just smuggling like sort of contraband in some ways, that like you're you're doing something very clear and that works like on the surface, but there's also like something underneath that people aren't going to directly experience, but it's going to inform what they're getting out of it, you know? And I find that obviously in your writing, which is like, this is a ridiculous kind of phantasmagorical kind of cyberpunk epic, but it has that sort of elements to it. Sometimes directly, like I love the parable of is it a sparrow? I can't remember the bird.
The parable of the sparrow. Yeah.
That's that's
my favorite one.
I love that. And I love when people do that, when they put like those sorts of elements into the work again, leading into a holistic form. Yeah.
That's Cielo's whole character. Like she's the only character in the book. Although a lot of people who read it identify with Zuno, which is
disturbing.
Really funny. But like with Cielo, that was like, I mean, some of my best writing, I think, is like just that opening passage with Cielo where there's the rattlesnake in the den, and the rattlesnake's giving birth to babies, and you see it from the perspective of the rattlesnake, because her whole thing is about motherhood, and it's really interesting because obviously I can't give birth. Right. But I've seen over the past 4 years, like I watched my wife I watched my son being born, which is fucking crazy. Like that shit is wild. Like when you first see like the hair on the kid's head, like breaching the vagina, it's like, what the fuck is going on? Like that shit is crazy. And I think it fucked me up a little bit, but like I was very sleep deprived. Like he did not want to come out. It took 36 hours for him to be born. So I was like sleep deprived. They're like, you want to hold this mirror and watch your son being born? I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. And then you see the afterbirth come out and all this kind of shit. But I became like very fascinated by this concept of motherhood, you know, watching her be a mother and all this kind of stuff. And like, all of Cielo's stuff, obviously, it's extremely overt, is all about motherhood, right? She fights a giant baby at one point. Like I'm not exactly the most subtle writer when it comes to things like this, but like the idea of like having a kid and then hating the kid and wanting to kill the kid but still loving it very deeply. It's all transmuted, which is a great word that I'm glad you said, through like a giant baby fight, you know, like you can put all that into there, but she is my favorite character. And, it's where most of the humanity of the book comes. 'Cause Kentaro is like, he's a retard who's just kind of running around doing what like, and he's like this representation. He
seems like the most like you, actually.
Yeah. He is, yeah, he is. He's like this retard who just like gets the life beat out of him but he keeps winning for some reason, you know, like because he's just good. Like he's dumb as fuck, but just good at one thing, which is killing in this case. And he just keeps succeeding. And then Zuno is like this. I wanted to kind of like tackle being an incel from a empathetic place. So like one person read it and they're like, at the end of the book, when Zuno finally has friends, like they're like, I shed a tear because it was like, oh, he finally, and I was like, that was not, I was just writing that, you know, like that didn't hit. But yeah, the one that hit me the most was Cielo. And then Sasuke is just kind of like, he's like I liked turning like a super artistic brainy guy into like a Jigglypuff character. Like I just thought that was funny. So that's just a long joke. That's the longest joke in the whole book.
I'm looking forward to that in the next one, like where Sasuke is going to be. What's going to happen?
Yeah, because now he's just a pink mass of flesh that has lived 200,000 lives.
Yeah. We haven't really like gone through all the plot points, so like people are probably going to hear all this stuff and be like, that sounds crazy. But that's good because you should go read it because all of it, it's all a love a piece and it all kind of it's very entertaining.
Straightforward.
Yeah, it's like addictive to read. Like it's it's like a lot going on, but it's like easy to read, and like you keep wanting to go through it. Like you'd say, get 500 something pages. I burned through it in like a week or something.
Yeah, so
That's
good.
cool.
And I cannot wait for the audiobook. Glenn's hard at work on that.
Glenn hit me up the other day. It's so funny because he sends me the recordings like as he's doing them, and there are parts where he like cracks up, and it's all the retarded parts that I thought was funny when I was writing them. But you know, like just hearing him.
Yeah, so I want to see what he's going to do with the Shark Man.
Yeah, I do want to see the Shark Man.
I can imagine what Cielo's voice is going to sound like.
She's just an essay.
Yeah.
She's yeah. Another funny thing that Glenn does, like behind the scenes stuff, is that like when he fucks up, he calls himself a faggot, which is really funny. He'll be like reading and he'll be like, fucking faggot. And then he'll like start reading again.
You should keep all that in, actually. And then people will be like, oh, this is really experimental and very stream of consciousness.
Yeah, it's very meta. Yeah.
Well, you know how there's like those Brodenist books where it's like one sentence for the whole book? They should like extend that to do the audiobook where it's all in one reading.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Wow. That's a great idea.
This book would be 25 hours at this point.
Wow. Well, that's the other thing as well. Like we're talking about like that sort of writing that is, you know, trying to get at something, through the language and transmute it. Like all of that Brodenist stuff. I do think that, you know, we don't need to, I've talked about it before in previous episodes, so we don't need to rehash it. But I just think that, you know, the vehicle for what you want to do is actually in things like this, like just genre fiction. Stop writing like, you know, crappy puzzle books and just write genre fiction, non-realist fiction to get at that stuff that you want to get at. Like, it's just
because you will get at it. It comes at you. It comes at you whether you want it to or not. Like for me, if I set this up where I'm like, okay, I want to do a scene where I need to have Zuno, you know, be at the end of his rope. So he goes to like a suicide pod chamber or whatever. You, as you're writing it, like one of those nights, again, 500 words a day, no excuses, whatever. Like one of those nights, like you're going to be sitting there and writing, and through no intention of your own, you're all of a sudden going to be writing something very profound. It's like the writing process and then the process of reading it are identical. And that writing process is like every day you're like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm, you know, trying to get at. But then something's going to sneak in where you're like, oh, all of a sudden, like I'm writing about profound feelings of loss and loneliness and all this kind of shit. And I didn't mean to. You don't set out to do that. You set out to be like, hey, he's got to get into the pod, be grossed out by it, almost die, and then come back, right? And then as you're writing it, you're like, oh, this is interesting. Which I really do think that like a lot of the best novel, like whether it's David Foster Wallace or even like Elroy or whatever, like Elroy has some really profound moments in American Tabloid and the Cold 6000 that you get to because the books are so big, right? Where it's like that night when he was scribbling on his pad that he has his assistants transcribe, he was cooking. And so you just got to show up and cook.
Yeah.
And then something's going to come out.
It's quantity leading to quality rather than opposed.
You can't plan for quality. Like you have to give up the idea that like what you're going to sit down and write is quality. Like you got to just.
And also, like I feel like that's the appeal. I think of the genre sort of mode is that you have to keep it going, right? Like, so,
Yeah.
but while you're doing, if you sit down to write like a, I don't know, postmodernist puzzle fiction, Brodeness sort of thing, and you're like, I'm going to muse about this today, anything that comes out is kind of got to be flat. But if you've got something behind you, like, I don't know, Zuno needs to kill the mushroom demon or whatever, like, and that's the scene that you need to get to, like, those same sort of like themes that you might have intended to sit down and write, if it was just like, you know, a similar kind of banal scene of like a guy somewhere on a street, like that'll come out in a much more like I said, alchemical way, and a way that's much more like striking and entertaining than it would if you were just doing the thing in itself. Does that make sense? Like I feel like that's the appeal of like using these generic formula, you know, style over substance stuff to get at that other stuff, you know, like, not that that's the point, but it's almost like it'll always come out if you're sort of like a good thinker and writer.
Yeah. It's like those insights are always what literature is tilting towards, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And then the trap is thinking that because it's tilting towards that, you have to move towards it's, again, writers should do acid or DMT or whatever, because you always realize through all these psychedelic trips that the way in is around. Always. Like if you try to go straight in, you go to hell and you spend your time in hell. But if you're just chill, if you just relax, like let it do what it wants to do, you find your way there. And it's usually through some dumb shit. Like you're looking at a Snickers bar and you're like, what if this was a train? And then you figure it all out. You're like, fuck, it is a train. Snickers bars are trains. And that's...
I look at the top and feel like they kind of look like the veins on a cock, but, you know, that's just me.
They do. So. They do. They do. Sini eats the Snickers bar in one bite.
The king size.
The king size. Gulp. Yeah. Well, do we have anything else that we wanted to say about the book? It's pretty late for you, isn't it, JDO? Do you need to go soon? Or
I'm having fun. No, I'm good.
Okay,
man.
cool,
I'm
cool.
good.
But yeah, was there anything on the book portion? Because what we're going to do next, I think, is we're going to do for the Patreon a bit of a discussion about one of JDO's key influences for this one, which would be the Cyberpunk 2077 game. But Matt, did you have anything else that you wanted to bring to the table?
No, just people should buy it. It's great.
Yeah.
I endorse it.
Yeah. Yep. And God's Fair No Better, as well as a reference to Cormac McCarthy, isn't it? The title.
It is.
Yeah. Which book was it? The Road?
The Road. Yeah. Yeah. Where men can't live, God's Fair No Better.
Amazing.
Is the line.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, go out and buy it. I was one. I think I was one of the first readers. I'm not sure if I was, but
you were the first.
Was I?
First?
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. I'm good at reading.
Yeah. I was like, this guy he'll get it done. Because you're thinking about that when you talk to readers for your book. You're like, who's actually going to read this? And I was like, he's a kept man. He's got time.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So yeah, I would recommend it as well. We'll have links to whatever David's preferred link is in the show notes. But you should go buy it if you're into, like, you know, cyberpunk, anime, fucking there's shit about, like you said, the rhizomatic mycelial kind of mushroom stuff. Like, it's very trippy and psychedelic. A lot of influence from Takeshi Miike. If you like all of that stuff, there's even like body horror kind of crap in there that's really great. Yeah, so I would
like Videodrome.
Videodrome, yes, that's a good influence. That I don't know if you've ever explicitly stated that, but yeah, it is.
I haven't, but I get it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, go and get it. I think it's like one of your best books, and I really sort of recommend it. So yeah. Go and buy it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode, and we'll see you on the other side to talk about Cyberpunk 2077.